Topic is Vietnam Last Days. So in this class, you will probably receive this reading and be asked to complete this reading with a partner. Each student will get a page, either left or right. Then you're going to work to answer the questions. At this point, I probably am going to start assigning roles for the Vietnam simulation. And the Vietnam simulation is going to put you in a situation where you have to deal with the Conference on Guerrilla Warfare, primarily point 5, where we are going to harass and nibble at the enemy. We've already looked at this particular source, so I'm going to move on. We also looked at some of the letters and poems that talked about the U.S. soldiers fighting in the war, and some of the prisoners of war, and why so many Americans wanted to not participate in this conflict, and how the Vietnam War also led to interesting responses like the Kirkhow and Holder decision to skyjack a plane uh, in retaliation for this Vietnam vet right here. His treatment during the Vietnam War, he had fought in the conflict, and then him and his girlfriend decided they were going to skyjack a plane. So, looking at the options in Vietnam, at this point, you can use nuclear weapons because this war really seems to be dragging on. You can continue to bomb the country, or you continue to increase troops. Here we see the pros and cons if you are going to use any of those particular strategies. And I use this just to simply get you to think about what Johnson possibly has as a solution to deal with the never ending war in Vietnam. Some important events to remember. We've already addressed some of these items here. So at the end, we see 50,000 Americans dead. We see over 2 million. And the North takes over South Vietnam in April of 1975. So the United States objective definitely seemed to have not been met. We know that the United States had dropped Agent Orange to destroy the jungle as a way to try to find the enemy. We know that the Tet Offensive and the My Lai Massacre and the Kent State shootings were definitely events like the Napalm Girl that definitely show that this war was out of control, which led to the United States' decision to withdraw, because continuing to fight this war, picking any of these other options, just definitely seemed to be, a losing battle. So for the most part, we're going to be looking at the end of this conflict and how this war comes to an end. And you have to have an understanding of what was going on in Cambodia. We already addressed the Ho Chi Minh Trail, where the North was going into Cambodia and attacking in the South, which forced Johnson to decide, and Nixon, to start bombing Cambodia. Whether or not this is legal is a question for debate. What we do know is that the Khmer Rouge comes to power in 1975, and the Khmer Rouge argued that the United States was going to bomb the capital Phnom Penh, which led to the Cambodian genocide, where numerous Cambodians were sent to S-21 and interrogated to determine whether or not they sided with the Americans during the Civil War. So this is a questionnaire. Some of the questions that were asked to those people who were in S-21, the detention center. Remember, the Cambodians were trying to implement a year zero and start their civilization over. Here we see an image of the killing fields, the forced agrarian communist state that they were trying to establish. And here we see some of the remaining corpses from the Cambodian genocide. Thant Nath was one of the people to survive S-21, and he had drawn these, created these paintings to depict what people at S-21 would go through. In this document here, you see Secretary of State and a foreign minister engaging in a conversation about what's going on in Cambodia. And in this particular part, they're saying that the threat is North Vietnam. At this point, because of the Cambodian genocide, Vietnam, that was already united, North and South, they had decided in 79 to invade Cambodia to stop the genocide. And so the U.S. in this document here is saying that the North Vietnamese are the aggressors, not Cambodia that's committing a genocide, but the Vietnamese. And here we see, you should also tell the Cambodians that we will be friends with them. So this is interesting because the United States Secretary of State here is arguing, you know what, we'll align ourselves, the United States, with Cambodia, because Cambodia is fighting against Vietnam, and Vietnam was the nation that we were fighting up until 75 when we wind up withdrawing. The Pentagon Papers. So the Pentagon Papers are significant because this document simply seemed to be, um, a report that outlined all of the errors the United States government made during the Vietnam War. And with the Pentagon Papers, they ended up in the New York Times. Somebody had leaked them, and it pretty much confirmed what Americans believed about the Vietnam War, that this was a war that was just not winnable, and a lot of atrocities and a lot of errors were made, which is what this reading in class is about. You're going to split up the reading and answer the questions. And once you're done, try to figure out some of these political cartoons. So ultimately, what winds up happening here, looking at this particular slide, is that we know that North and South Vietnam, that the United States is bombing Cambodia. That is outlined in the Pentagon Papers. It is debatable about whether or not that is legal or not. And the FBI is starting to report, and investigate, how did these Pentagon Papers get released and end up in the New York Times? So the president, the executive branch, is going to create or work with a group of people called the plumbers. And the plumbers are working for the president. And their job is to try to figure out a way to plug up the leaks. So let's just say you have a toilet bowl here, and there is a crack in the toilet bowl. And here we have some a turd, from which the turd winds up being the Pentagon Papers. You call a plumber to plug up the leak, and in this case, the plumbers are working for the executive branch of government. And so the plumbers are trying to plug up the leaks because the Pentagon Papers are out in public. And so the plumbers are trying to figure out where the leaks were at. And one of the places that they're going to wind up going is to Democratic headquarters, to sneak into the Watergate Hotel to try to figure out what the Democrats have on Nixon, who is a Republican. These individuals are going to get caught. They're going to get caught breaking in. And when they get caught, they have the best alibi. The question here is whether or not they were actually working for the president, and whether or not the president has the authority to create an organization that has the sole purpose of plugging up the leaks. And that seems to be what happened. So I put the best alibi ever. The U.S. president ordered us to do it. The FBI is going to start investigating. And it seems that all of the roads, all of the trails lead to the White House. Going back to the point that whether or not Nixon was trying to conceal some of his acts. Come to find out that Nixon was recording the conversation, which was not uncommon, and something that still happens today, where conversations by the president are recorded. And so he is asked to hand over the tapes, and apparently some of the tapes, the crucial parts, are missing, which leads to what becomes known as the Watergate scandal. And so that reading pretty much covers Watergate. And what I want to focus on here is that the Vietnam War, the hiding of the bombings of Cambodia that are exposed in the Pentagon Papers, eventually wind up bringing Nixon down, which is what that reading that you are being asked to complete is about.